walls of Jerusalem. He was not capable of doing it. Right? What's that? There is sound or no sound? Oh, we're double checking. We have our I think whatever, we're going to find out. Anyways, there is or no? Yeah, we're good? Okay. Anyways, Nebuchadnezzar surrounded the walls of Jerusalem, and at that point it became extremely difficult for the nation of Israel to live. However, they had a lot of tricks up their sleeve, including massive storage houses of food that existed in Jerusalem. There was all sorts of tunnels to get in and out without the Nebuchadnezzar army realizing that they were getting in and out. And therefore, the nation of Israel managed to survive there for 3.5 years until Nebuchadnezzar broke the walls of Jerusalem and entered 3.5 years later. Now, because this is when the fall of Jerusalem began, it's like the beginning, therefore it's an extremely strict and extremely important commemoration day, and the Jews have been fasting ever since. From the time of the destruction of Temple, we fast on the 10th of Tevet, and the 10th of Tevet is one of the strictest fasts in the calendar. Okay, in some ways it is stricter than the 10th of Av, or the 9th of Av, when the temple was destroyed. Because on the 9th of Av, if the 9th of Av falls out on Shabbat, we do not fast. However, if the 10th of Tevet, ends out on Shabbat, we would fast. Now the problem is, it's not a problem, the nation of Israel today works on a calendar. Okay, the calendar system that the Jewish people work on today only allows each date to fall out on 4 out of 7 days of the week. Any day, if you have your birthday could only fall out on 4 days of the week. Okay, every single date, any date in the Jewish calendar could only fall out on 4 out of the 7 days of the week. They did this on purpose when they organized the calendar. As a matter of fact, originally the nation of Israel we organized our calendar based on the moon. There was a witness that would come, they would see the moon with their own eyes, and they would come to the Beth Din, and the Sanhedrin would determine, in fact, the new moon was seen, and then they would establish a new month. When that system was in play, then every day on the Jewish calendar could fall out on every day of the year, because the Beth Din had the power to determine any time that they wanted, that today was the first day of the month, if the witnesses came and said they saw the new moon. However, when they established an official calendar based on the lunar system, right, from that point on, the way they set it up is that every date on the Jewish calendar could only fall out on 4 days of the week. Now, there are only there's only 2 fasts on the Jewish calendar that blow away any obstacle to their observance. What I mean by that is every single fast, if it comes out on Shabbat, we do not fast. If it comes out on Friday, we do not fast. Okay? Why? Because there's a concept of not going into Shabbat starving, right? It's not so respectful to go into a great holy day and you're starving. And therefore, you're not meant to fast on Shabbat. You're also not meant to fast on Friday. And therefore, the Jewish people have 6 fasts. Out of those 6 fasts, 4 of them, if they fall out on Friday or Shabbat, their date is moved. Right? We move the date. However, there are 2 fasts that their observance are never stopped. One is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, which is in fact, some people call it the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur. Okay? Now, on Yom Kippur, no matter when it falls out, we will observe it. Yom Kippur could fall out on Shabbat, but cannot fall out on Friday. This year, for example, we celebrated Yom Kippur on Shabbat, on Saturday, but it can never fall out on Friday. The 10th of Tevet is the other way around. It could fall out on Friday, but cannot fall out on Shabbat. Okay, but if it would have fell out on Shabbat, we may have been observing it on Shabbat as well. Okay? However, because it could fall out on Friday, and it does fall out on Friday, like tomorrow, we will be fasting tomorrow. We will not eat from sunrise, which is 5:19, until Shabbat begins. Now, Shabbat technically begins, we have, sunset is 4:50, so Shabbat begins 4:50, okay? However, there's a twilight zone between 4:50 and 5:17. And again, I'm quoting you just the times for tomorrow. This is not a general rule for all around the year. For tomorrow in Tzfat, in the holy city of Tzfat, we will be celebrating Shabbat beginning from 4:50. However, till 5:15, we cannot begin a meal. Okay? We're going to begin the meal at 5:17, earliest 5:17. We're going to go home, we're going to make Kiddush, and we're going to have the meal. Okay? And that's how we're going to break our fast.
Fast is morning, repentance.
So Ruvain over here sits here and he says, I want to know everything. He wants to know everything because he's a good student, and a good student wants to know everything. Okay, so let's take one step at a time. Okay, we have the fast begins and ends. It begins at dawn. It ends when the stars, 3 medium stars come out. And that, according to Chabad.org in the city of Tzfat, it begins at 5:19 a.m. and ends at 5:17 p.m. All right? That's that. Now, you're going to notice that unlike most Shabbat here in Yeshiva, we're going to pray as early as possible so that you can go home and fast and break your fast, because you're not meant to fast on Shabbat. And therefore, as quickly as we could, we should be breaking our fasts. Okay? Which means we should be going home as quickly as possible, as early as we can to make Kiddush. We're not supposed to push it off because you're not supposed to fast on Shabbat. And since you're not supposed to fast on Shabbat and you fasted the whole Friday, you should try to end your fast as early as possible on Shabbat. What? What's wrong?
There's a guy behind you who's silent.
Did he make bunny ears on me? What did he do? What did he do? Good. So we covered that. Now, what was your question again? What is a fast day? The fast day, there's a lot of discussion on a fast day. A fast day is not about inflicting pain on yourself. That's not what it's about. It's not about, it's not either about repentance. A fast day essentially is you limiting the energy you're giving to your physical bodily reality, okay, in order to connect with godliness at a deeper level. Now, why are you connecting to godliness at a deeper level? Because you want to connect with him in order to correct a particular sin, a particular fault, a particular problem that the nation of Israel had. Okay? And that's why very often when a sad day happens, it obviously shows why did a sad day happen? Why would a sad day happen? Something bad happened, which means that we distance ourselves from God. Because we were distanced from God, in order to connect and to come closer to God, we fast. Because that enables us to be more spiritual. And by the way, Kabbalistically, if you want to be deeply spiritual, it is good to every once in a while, within your capability, to fast. Yeah. Again, you're not meant to fast in an amount of time or amount of days that would harm you physically. You're not allowed to fast, and you're not allowed to, by the way. If it's going to physically harm you, you're not allowed to fast. Even on the official fast days, if you're going to be harmed, you're not allowed to fast. Right? The Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, even if you would do less spiritual actions, for example, learn less Torah. If you're going to learn less Torah because you're fasting, then you shouldn't fast, at least in the other fasts, meaning not in the official 6 days that we're meant to fast. But you should not take upon yourself your own fast day if it's going to hamper your connection to God, your godly services. You're not supposed to fast. But a fast day is actually meant to be a day that connects you, gives you a deeper connection to godliness. That's actually what it's meant to be. It's not meant to be a day of sad mourning. We do very often in our prayers, we speak about what happened, but ultimately we're trying to connect on a deeper level to God. All right? Good. Now, how do we get into that? Oh, you asked. Good question. Good? Baruch Hashem. Give our friend over here some place to sit down. Okay. Now, let's continue on. We now are discussing the Talmud. It is Thursday, which means we finished the quota already prior. Shalom Aleichem. Please have a seat. Huh? But till you speak to him, you're in a yeshiva. You should learn something. So sit down, have a seat. No, somebody's sitting there. Here. You're sitting right next to me over here. Come sit down. right? Just for any of the people watching online, we have to explain to them that this is a yeshiva, it's a place of learning, and every once in a while we have some guy that just wanders in, right? So you see him in the background just wandering around, and you're wondering what's he doing here? And I'm trying to figure the same thing out. I don't know what he's doing here. So what do? I bring him here, I tell him to sit down, and he joins the class.
This is the trauma seat from my high school.
Trauma seat?
Yeah, sit next to the rabbi because I'm in trouble.
It traumatizes you to sit next to the rabbi?
A little bit, yeah.
Wait.
To be honest,
I'm sorry to
I
hear.
went to live in yeshiva. Okay, go.
Okay, good. Let's go. Okay. I'm sorry to hear.
Don't worry,
Should I
there's
give you
only two people
should I
watching.
give you a hug? Should I give you a
No,
hug?
it's okay. Hug it out.
Don't worry, there's only two people watching.
7. We have here 7 people, 2 people on YouTube, but we have the other ones. Baruch Hashem, our producer got us on other platforms. Anyways, what I wanted to discuss today, being that we finished the quota, normally on Thursday we go around the table sometimes and we ask everybody to read. However, at the current moment, because many of the people here, I don't think fit into that category yet, that could go around the table and read. I see some new faces. Some people just joined part of this week. So we're going to learn a little bit of extra Talmud this week, if you don't mind, if it's okay with you. We'll learn a little bit of extra Talmud.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to call everyone over individually, whoever's meant to read, and you'll read individually. Okay, what do I want to do? We did not cover the Rashbam, correct? However, if we go through the Rashbam, we're not going to get through enough. I want to go to Tosfos. Okay, Tosfos, for those of you who don't know, is one of the great commentators of the Talmud, and as I always tell people when they join my class, is that there are 2 main commenters on the Talmud. One is called Rashi, and one is called Tosfos. Okay, Rashi was a great sage that lived in France. Okay, you could look it up. Rashi, R-A-S-H-I, Rashi. He lived in France, and he commented on the entire Tanakh, as well as the entire Talmud. Okay? Now, Rashi came to make your life a little bit easier. Okay? He came, and in his commentary, he will bring certain pieces of information that he feels without this information, you will not be able to understand the Talmud. As a matter of fact, if any of you are going to read some English translations of the Talmud, you don't even realize that in the English translations they're including often details of Rashi. They're not literal translations of the words, but very often they're including explanations from Rashi. Okay? Makes sense? Tosfos, on the other hand, came to make your life more difficult. Didn't want to make your life easier, like difficult. And I'll tell you a simple conversation just to give you an example of the difference between Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi, basically, he came to you as a student and says, Yaakov David, you're having trouble learning the Gemara. I'd like to help you out. If you knew this piece of information, you would be able to understand it better. If you knew that piece of information, you'd understand it better. Right? Tosfos, he comes up to the student. You think you understand the Gemara? Wait till you see what I'm about to tell you. Then we'll see if you really understand. So you understand? So Rashi's coming to a student that doesn't yet understand the Gemara, and he tells the student that doesn't yet understand the Gemara, what does he tell him? I'll help you. Rashi says, listen, you don't understand the Gemara, I'll help you. Tosfos is not interested in the student that doesn't understand the Gemara. You don't understand the Gemara, go to Rashi. He'll help you out.
And one of them is
right?
on one side?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. However, Tosfos, you don't understand the Gemara, go to Rashi. He'll help you out. Oh, you think you understand the Gemara? Now I'm going to show you how you don't really understand the Gemara. And that's actually what Tosfos' narrative pretty much is. Okay, for those of you seeing these big Gemaras over here with all these words over here, you have in the center of the page is the Gemara. If you go towards the binding, which means the inside of the page, right? The reason why I don't say the right or the left, because on this side it's the left, and on this side it's the right? But it's really the pneumius, the inner commentary, the one that's inside, right? Closest to the binding, that is Rashi. The one that is outer, further from the binding, closer to the end of the page, that is Tosfos.
So bad.
Right? Now, what was your question again? Or that was your question?
That was my question.
That was your question. Where was Rashi? Okay. So that's the way it's set up in the modern Gemara. You have to realize that both Rashi and Tosfos, they didn't write their commentary while the Gemara was there. They wrote books. They wrote books. And you used to, before the Talmud was set up by the Vilna press, you would have to have books. You'd have one book called the Talmud. You have another book called Rashi, another book called Tosfos, and you would have all these books. As a matter of fact, if you go to some of the serious Talmudic scholars in some of the big Talmudic seminaries around the world, you may find them with a Talmud and another 10 books around them. You know why? Because we didn't get all the commentators in this book. So there's many other commentators that have given their opinion or their perspective on what the Talmud's talking about. And therefore, you can see, I've seen this all the time. I've even done it every once in a while when I decide to act like the serious Talmudic scholar. You know, I'm semi-serious right now, but not that serious. Now, sometimes if you really want to research a concept to the core, that's it. You end up having your Talmud in the center and surrounded by a whole bunch of other books. Yeah? But that's the way you used to read Rashi and Tosfos. Now, when they actually made the Vilna print of the Talmud, that's the way they did it. And the Vilna print of the Talmud, by the way, you should know, for some reason, I have no idea how, but it became the standard in the Jewish world. Even the Ashkenazim, the Sephardim, everybody today uses the Vilna print. How this happened, I think, is a miracle. It's a miracle. And it's a very good miracle because it allows the Jewish people to all learn from the same book, the Talmud, and quote each other pages. So it's a miracle. It's a tremendous miracle because in Judaism, you look at any other book, there's tens, even a Shulchan Aruch today, which was written after the Talmud, there's a whole bunch of different prints and different pages. If I quote your page, you open a book, you'll be like, what are you talking about? It doesn't say that here because it's a different page, right? Here, with the Vilna print, thank God, we have to thank God for the great miracle that He's done, that all the Jewish people use the same print. So now I can quote somebody a page and it'll actually be there, right? Which is a miracle in itself that, two Jews, they say 2 Jews, 3 opinion. I don't know how on earth there's only one Talmud print. Don't know how that happened. What could you do? Anyways, weitergegangen. Hashgacha Protus, divine providence. Now, that being said, I want to learn one Rashi. One Tosfos, One Tosfos we're going to go through. The Tosfos is the first Tosfos on 105a. Kuf Hey Omud Aleph. On Ula. We had a question on Ula. If you remember from yesterday, Ula, when he finished saying, when he said Havdalah, he said the blessing ending Shabbat, he says, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. That's all he said. He said, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. That's all he said. Nothing else. No more, no less. Right? And then we asked the question, we said, well, if he said Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, means he's not saying Baruch in the beginning and not saying Baruch at the end, when he should be saying Baruch in the beginning and in the end. Right? And then we had a whole discussion how there's all blessings. We start with Baruch, which means we start blessed are you God, and we end the blessing blessed are you God, except for a list of exceptions, and Havdalah wasn't part of that list of exceptions. Right? If you remember the answer of the Gemara is that blessing is similar to which blessing? It's similar to the blessing on mitzvahs. And mitzvahs, blessing on mitzvahs, we say Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you God in the beginning, and then we don't say it at the end. We only say it one time, and that's that. All right? Good. Kenai Nahar. Let's continue. What's this? Oh, you're recording me? Oh, wow. Sheesh. Kashya le'ula. There's a question on ula. Now remember what I told you. Tosfos is expecting that you understand the Gemara, and if you don't understand the Gemara, you're not going to understand Tosfos, guaranteed, because Tosfos is starting with the fact that you understand the Gemara. As I told you, Rashi starts with the fact that you don't understand the Gemara. He's giving you information to help you understand the Gemara. Tosfos is expecting you already understand the Gemara. And once you already understand the Gemara, and by the way, Rashi too, because very often his questions, as this Tosfos is concerned, is a question on Rashi. So Tosfos is expecting that not only do you know the Gemara, you know the Gemara and you know Rashi's commentary on the Gemara. Now Tosfos is going to open up the book and try to deal with it. Okay, Kashilot is a question on Ula. Lepirush HaKuntris. to the commentator of the Kuntris, which means the booklet commentator. Rashi was called the booklet commentator by Tosfos and by many people for a long time. You know why? Why was Rashi called the booklet commentator, Ruvain? I'm sure you heard this story from me before, at least once. Huh? Why was Rashi called the booklet commentator?
Because you wrote a book of commentaries.
Huh?
Because you wrote a book of commentaries.
Booklet commentator.
Yeah. Because you wrote on the
Well,
book.
so did everybody wrote. Everybody wrote books on all commentators were books.
Rashi was the best one.
Rashi was the best one. Shkoyach. No, I need a better answer than that. Come on, man. No? Why is he called the booklet commentator? Why doesn't he call him the Rashi commentator? Why not? Why the booklet commentator? Ruvain. No. I told this story yet. I'm surprised no one remembers the story. You weren't here. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that means I need to tell the story again. Rashi was an extremely humble individual. Okay, and he didn't want people to give him too much respect because he was humble. He didn't feel he deserved it. However, Rashi would come to the study hall and he would hear people studying, and they were trying to understand the Gemara, and they had a real big difficulty understanding the Gemara. And Rashi felt he could help them, but he didn't want to help them directly, because if he helped them directly, then people would start respecting him, right? And he didn't want the respect. He didn't want the what do you call it? What's the word in English?
Ego.
Huh? The honor. There's a different the prestige, recognition. There's a word I'm thinking of. Huh?
Recognition is a good one.
You don't want people to make a big deal out of him. So Rashi went home that evening, and he remembered all of the things that he heard that students were struggling with. Whatever he heard students struggling with, he went home that evening, and he would write a little booklet with the explanations or the details that these students needed in order to understand the Talmud. The next day, he came really early in the morning to the study hall, and he puts the booklet on the table, and he walks away. No one knows. The next morning, the students rock up in the morning, and they see this interesting booklet on the table, and they open the booklet, and sure enough, he's answering all the questions that they had the day before. Wow, how did that, So they were amazed. Very nice. These are great answers. And then they continued studying the Talmud, and as they continued studying the Talmud, they had more questions. And sure enough, every time they had questions, the next day a booklet would rock up with all the answers. And therefore, whenever they used to speak about Rashi, they called him the booklet commentator, because that's they didn't even know his name. So he became known as the booklet commentator. Now, one day, there was a chutzpinyak. You know what a chutzpinyak is? That guy's a little, wise guy in America. How do you say wise guy? Cheeky. They call him in England cheeky, right? Cheeky. Yeah? You're from England? Where are you from? Oh, you're from California. Who's from England? No one's here from England? Huh? No. All right. Cheeky. Cheeky or a wise guy? Chutzpan, right? Well, chutzpan is the way they say it in Hebrew today. In Yiddish, the old Yiddish, they used to say a chutzpinyak. Chutzpinyak. Yeah. Anyways, he decided that this Mr. Booklet commentator, he was going to blow his cover. So what did he do? He stayed up the whole night. He hid in the synagogue, under a bench, and he was watching for this Mr. Booklet commentator to bring the booklet. Sure enough, Rashi rocks up, and what does he do? Puts down the booklet. We caught you. We know who you are. I blew your cover, and that's actually how he got. Later, they found out who he was, and once they found out who he was, and they realized he was such a great scholar, so they actually hired him. He actually ended up running a yeshiva. He became the Rosh Yeshiva of a yeshiva seminary, and then they call him Rashi, which is Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki. So his real name was Shlomo, right? Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki. Yitzchaki, his father was Yitzchak, and then he became known as Rashi. However, the name booklet commentator kind of stuck, right? And for many years, people called him the booklet commentator, including Tosfos, Pirush HaKuntris, the explanation or the commentator of the booklet, right? That's what he became known as. Okay? Now, there are times where Tosfos actually says Pirush Rashi, and sometimes where he says Pirush HaKuntris, because apparently at a certain point, they stopped calling him the booklet commentator, and they started calling him Rashi. But if you read the Tosfos that was written before that time, it says Pirush HaKuntris. And if you read a Tosfos written after that time, it says Pirush Rashi. Right? As Tosfos is commentating on Rashi, it says, according to the Kuntris, according to the booklet commentator, Pirush Le'il, he says, the Loy Omer Ella Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, he literally only said Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, the two Loy and nothing else. Right? Meaning he said, Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. And that was the entire blessing. Comes Tosfos and says, hold on a second. My salkadaitoch, what in earth planted an idea in your mind, the maksha, to even ask a question on Ula? Hopshita, it is obvious, the lebirchas aperis damya, it is clearly close to the blessing on Pedis, the blessing on food, which we say the reason why blessing on food, you only say Baruch Atah one time in the beginning and not in the end, because we say it's a short, quick blessing. A short, quick blessing is another blessing that we only say Baruch in the beginning. We say blessed are you God in the beginning, and we don't say it in the end. And again, when you say a bracha on a mitzvah, what do you say? Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivonu. It's already a long blessing. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivonu. Al achilas matzah. That's 7 words. When you say a bracha on fruit, you say boire pri adama. 3 words. Boom. Right? Baruch hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. 3 words also. Right? And therefore Tosfos says, hold on a second. If you're trying to suggest that all Ula actually said was Baruch hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, it's such a short blessing, it should have been obvious that he didn't need to say a blessing in the beginning and the end because it's such a short blessing, just like the blessing of fruits. In other words, says Tosfos, it doesn't make sense that that's actually the blessing that he said. He must have said a longer blessing, because if he would have said such a short blessing, there would have been no question to begin with. Right? So let me just explain to you what's going on. The Talmud has a question, right? Yeah? The Talmud has a question. Rashi, or the booklet commentator, he explains the Gemara's question in perhaps the simplest way to explain it, because the Gemara says that he only said Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. However, comes Tosfos and says, no. There's got to be something deeper in the question itself. Now remember, we already answered the question, so you're like, why do we need to deal with the question if we already have the answer? The truth is, we don't really need it, because we have an answer. We don't need to. However, Tosfos is very often into analyzing the question, understanding the question properly, even though we have an answer. Because very often, perhaps even here, if you pay attention, there could be halachic ramifications depending on which wording you use. Okay, there's tremendous amount of halacha, Jewish law, that is established based on nuances of a question, right? And therefore, it is vital to understand the question properly, right? And Tosfos rejects Rashi's explanation of the question, because he says, it's such a short blessing, it's obviously should have the same rule as the blessing on fruits. So it seems like there shouldn't have been a question to begin with, right? And therefore, Tosfos says as follows. The Oid, he says another reason why he doesn't like the booklet commentator's opinion. Lema de Savar Ula ki Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Why don't we say that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Yehuda Hanasi? Sorry, that Ula holds like Yehuda Hanasi. The Mashmanami D'lo Yavi Chotim. That he didn't either. If you look back on the previous page, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said a similar blessing. And since Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said a similar blessing prior in the previous page, exactly like Ula said, we have a general rule that an Amoraic sage very often sides with one of the opinions of a Tanaic sage. Yeah? If we have a clear Tanaic sage that says exactly word for word what Ula said, then what's the problem? How is that a question on Ula? Baruch Hamad ben Kedesh L'chol, that's it. I believe so. We can go on the last pages. That's what Tosfos says over here, and I'm assuming that Tosfos is accurate. Yeah. Yeah. And nothing else. I think actually it was over here, no? Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda Amar Mavda B'Kedesh L'chol, and that's it. And he said, Zuhi Havdalasa Shel Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi would say Baruch Hamavda B'Kedesh L'chol, and that's it. It was a very short one, and that's that. Now, remember what we're saying over here. Listen carefully. If Rabbi Yehuda Anasi said that, why would it be a question on Ula? Ula could just simply say, I hold like that Tanaic sage, which is no problem. It's perfectly legitimate in the Talmudic, how should I say it, rules. Perfectly legitimate for Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, for Ula to hold like Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. So Tosfos essentially challenges Rashi's opinion and his explanation of the question of the Gemara with two separate challenges. Number one is, since it's a short bracha, it should have been similar to blessings on food. Number two, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi clearly had the same opinion, which Rabbi Yehuda Anasi was a Tanaic sage. Even if there's other Tanaic sages that say otherwise, I can at least say I'm following this Tanaic sage. And therefore, the Tosfos essentially is completely, unequivocally rejecting the opinion of Rashi / the booklet commentary. And that's it. He's done. Meaning the Tosfos brings two separate reasons why he says, I cannot accept the explanation of Rashi. So remember, you're the student, you read the Gemara, you didn't understand the Gemara until you went to Rashi. Now Rashi explained it to you, you're like, okay, now I understand the Gemara. Tosfos says, come here a second. Explain to me what you think you understand. And then he says, well, what about this? What about that? That means Rashi's out. Now, if Rashi's out, we gotta replace him. We gotta replace him with a new way of seeing the Gemara, right? And by the way, sometimes the Tosfos will take apart an understanding of the Gemara and not put it back together. In this case, he will put it back together. But sometimes the Gemara, sometimes Tosfos literally ends with saying, "That's it. We're stuck. It's done. Kaput." Yes, you had a question? Oh. Yeah.
This name what's his name?
Who?
Not Rashi, Deva.
Tosfos.
Does he ever prove Rashi wrong in things that he tries to explain?
Well, he just proved Rashi wrong. Now again, in proper Talmudic philosophy, we never say that one rabbi proves another rabbi wrong. What we could do is we can suggest that one rabbi has a strong argument against another rabbi, and therefore we will follow the rabbi, one of the rabbis, and not the other rabbis. Shalom Aleichem. Huh? You coming to join my shir?
I came to
You're
learn
learning
something, but
after
I'm
all
over
the
here.
after all the Kabbalistic teachings that you're learning, you want to learn a little bit of the Talmud too.
If you put it that way, how can I say no? At least for 5 minutes.
There you go. Yes, good. I want to have at least as many people in the class as I have online. Right. Right now we have actually the truth is more people online still. You guys are winning. You're winning. There's more guys online. Get your friends, share it, whatever it is. I don't know how you get your friends here. The guys online are winning. Okay. Let's continue. Yes. Yeah. Correct. Now again, just because Tosfos made a better argument than Rashi, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to reject Rashi. Okay? You have to really go to the Shulchan Aruch, to the Beis Yosef, to the Tur, where they sometimes will tell you what the final halacha, what the final rule is. Right? They were very smart people, and they had a lot of interesting mechanisms that they used, and Baruch Hashem, they were successful in figuring out how to do it. But and they explain, very often they argue why, and sometimes they disagree. Sometimes there could be a disagreement whether or not we follow Rashi or Tosfos. But as far as Talmudic literacy goes, which this program we call the Talmudic Literacy Program, as far as basic Talmudic literacy goes, you have to understand that Tosfos makes an argument, and according to Tosfos' perspective, he threw out the opinion of Rashi, and therefore he's going to replace the necessity to explain the Gemara. He has to replace it with his own explanation, right? Because now that he took away Rashi's explanation, now we're going to come to Tosfos and say, okay, well then how do you see the question of the Gemara, right? Yeah, Venida, and it appears to me, and this is Tosfos answering, it appears to me, the Ula Amar Nami, Kol Sha'ar Havdolesh Ve'ishtik, Beloy Chasima. Says Tosfos, even though the Gemara did not say this, but he thinks that Ula said the entire list of Havdalah. If you remember from last week, which some of you were not here, but we said that there's, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, just say Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chel. We had another opinion that said that you have to mention 3 different things that God separates, and there's opinion that you have to mention up to 7 things that God separates. Says Tosfos that even though the Gemara didn't mention this, but Ula didn't just say Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chel. You know what he really said? Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chel, Ben L'Cheshach, Ben Yisrael L'Amin, Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Me'amayse, boom, and end right there. So in other words, he didn't say a short three-word blessing. He said, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'Chel, Ben Or L'Cheshach, Ben Yisrael L'Amin, Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheish Me'amayse. He said 16 words. I think I counted right. That's exactly his point. He's saying that if there was only 3 words said, he gives 2 reasons why the question doesn't make any sense. Remember in the beginning, Tosfos gave 2 reasons why 3 words, if he only said Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chel, it wouldn't make any sense. I'll remind you the 2 reasons why it doesn't make sense. Reason number 1 is it's too similar to the blessing on fruits, which are also, you only say 1 Baruch in the beginning and not in the end because it's such a short blessing. Right? That's 1. Number 2 is Rabbi Yehuda Anasi clearly said Baruch HaMavdal Ben Kodesh L'Chel and nothing else. Right? And therefore, if you're going to suggest that Ula said this, what type of question was the Gemara going to have against Ula when he has a Tanaic sage backing him up?
So then on something so important, why would the Gemara truncate the entire sentence into 3 words?
Oh, now we have somebody who's on his way to becoming a brilliant Talmudic scholar. Why would the Gemara do that? Why? Good question. All right, who said the Gemara did that? Oh, you read the Gemara, and the Gemara said that. Tosfos actually, in his day, read the Gemara, and that's what the Gemara said. Who's to say that that's really what the Gemara said? Maybe there's a misprint. Maybe somebody wrote it. They forgot to write the longer version. They didn't write it. They make them. Happens all the time. As a matter of fact, unlike the Sefer Torah, I say this a lot, it's very important. To understand Gemara, you have to understand very, very strongly. The Sefer Torah that we read every day, or every few days, right? Monday, Thursday, today's Thursday, we actually read the Torah. If you davened, if you prayed the morning prayer with a minyan, you should have actually said, you should have actually done it too. Yeah, you heard the Torah today?
Yeah, we did. I got called up.
Oh, you got called up to the Torah. Can I know that? Gee. Good. Yeah, did they throw candies at you? No. Yeah, okay. Maybe next time. It's good. Anyways, the Sefer Torah that the Jewish people have is extremely accurate, and the reason for that is because it is prohibited to write a Sefer Torah without having a written version in front of you. You're not allowed to do it by heart. You're not allowed to. And therefore, the scribes that write the Torah have to be meticulous to get every letter correct, because if they miss even one letter, if there's one letter in the whole Torah that is incorrect, the entire Torah is not considered a kosher Torah. It needs to be, it needs to be fixed, and it cannot be used in the public service. Not allowed to do it. Yeah? You're not allowed to use a Sefer Torah even missing one letter in front of the minyan when you're reading the Torah, even one letter, no. And therefore the scribe that has to handwrite the Torah must have a written script in front of him in order to write the Torah. Otherwise he's not allowed to write the Torah. Okay? Therefore, it is extremely accurate. Till today, there are very few disputes on letters even. I mean, I'm not talking about words. As far as I know, there's no disputed word in the entire Torah. Right? There's not even one word that's disputed. Every single word is accurate. Right? There are a few letters. There's a few letters of words that are disputed. One in particular is a final aleph versus a final hey, which makes no difference to the meaning of the word. There are a few smaller arguments. Sometimes there is a word written with a yud in the middle and sometimes without the yud in the middle. However, there is very few disputes as far as the version of the original Torah. However, when you deal with Talmud and Mishnah, even though today we have, thank God, the Vilna print, which is very standardized because we have printing presses and computers and all sorts of things like that. So right now it's pretty accurate. But before the Vilna print was printed, there was actually different versions of wording in the Gemara. Not only was there different versions 100 years ago, even 1,000 years ago, approximately, the Tosfos was about 700-800 years ago. And in his time, he realized, and they realized that sometimes there could possibly be misprints and missing words and missing sentences and missing paragraphs, right? And by the way, if you go all the way back to the time of the Talmud, even in the time of the Gemara, there was very often where they said the same thing about the Mishnah. There were times where they said there must be missing sentences here, right? They analyzed that it can't be that this makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Since it doesn't make sense, we must argue that there is missing words in this version. And that's essentially what Tosfos is saying. He doesn't know for a fact that there's missing words. He doesn't know for a fact that there's a misprint. He knows for a fact that the question doesn't make sense if there wasn't a misprint, as he argues. And therefore, he says, because the version as we have it doesn't make sense, therefore it must be that there's words and there's sentences that are missing in our version of the Gemara. And that's what Tosfos is arguing. He says it must be that Ula's blessing was in fact a lot longer. And since his blessing was a lot longer, therefore he should have ended with the Baruch Atah Hashem, and he didn't. And that was the question of the Gemara. Then the Gemara answered that question very nice. He says it's like similar to the blessing of mitzvahs because it's only praising God, and that's that. All right, well that's the answer. But the question has to be based on the fact that he actually said, in fact, a longer blessing and didn't say a quick, short blessing, because if it was a quick, short blessing, he has two reasons why there would never been a question to begin with. Yeah? Yeah. Right? The kivan sheyesh ba'arichas ksas umeshani the dami l'shapel l'birchas apedis v'chein mash with Rabbi Yehuda lo haya shoyel el leida im yachtim oy kirav Rav Shmuel. And he ends out that the reason why Rav Yehuda, that we spoke about in the beginning of the week, wanted to know how he did Havdalah, he thought that he definitely would make a closing. He would definitely say a closing blessing like we do today. However, he wasn't sure what the closing was, because remember last page, we actually had a dispute on what is the wording of the closing of the blessing of Havdalah. We had an opinion that says, Mekadosh Yisrael. There's another opinion that says, Hamavdalah Kodesh L'Chayil, like we said. What was the other one? We had another one as well. Anybody remember? Yoitze Bereishis. We said Yoitze Bereishis. Some people say Baruch Atah Hashem Yoitze Bereishis. There's another version. Perhaps that's the case. Yeah? Good. And that's essentially the end of the Tosfos that we have over here. So, yeah. We know that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi closed Baruch HaMavdeh Mekeri L'Chol. We're not sure what Ula did. Again, you have to remember, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was a Tanaic sage. Okay, Tanaic sages, had authority over the Amoraic sages, right? And that's why an Amoraic sage cannot negate what a Tanaic sage says, right? However, there were many times where the Amoraic sages sided with one of the Tanaic sages, which means if the Tanaic sages had a dispute, sometimes they argued with that sometimes they sided with one side of the argument. Not necessarily were they saying that one was more accurate and one was less accurate. It could perhaps be that they were saying that one's the halacha. That's just the way it goes. That's the halacha. Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda Nazi said Baruch Hamad ben Keri L'chol, but that's why Tosfos has a problem, because if Ula said exactly what Rabbi Yehuda Nazi said, you cannot question how he has the right to say that. The Gemara is questioning how does he have the right to say Baruch Hamad ben Keri L'chol without making a closing blessing as well. That was a question of the Gemara on Ula. However, if he's doing exactly what a Tanaic sage said, then that's that. Then there would be no question. All right, let's end over here. Thank you for joining. We'll see you again later.